Welcome to another edition of What the Fuck Happenings here in Mendham, mostly. So anyway, today was a long day, warm day, and yeah. The town has an Earth Day event every year where you go clean up some stuff. So I went, as is my intended tradition. And so I recorded a video on the way and on the way back, and so I thought I would play that and comment where appropriate on my own video, yes. So the general subject is the modern mystic has been making some stupid videos about how the brain works, kind of, but he really does think the minor part of our existence is our learned behavior, and that we always resort to some sort of more rudimentary function. And I think it just denies the, the fact that the thinking is really important, and that it changes the rudimentary function in some sense, in the sense that the better thoughts can start owning your emotional character, your feeling character, and yes, you become something very different than an animal in terms of the discipline that your brain can exercise, in terms of how it makes arguments and its ideas regarding having integrity and doing it right. Little things are sort of an example of it. I mean, a lot of people on the left and the right use image manipulations to make a point. They'll make a funny picture of Trump or some thing like that, or they'll quote mine and make somebody look ridiculous. And these are tactics that I find a little bit I'm uncomfortable with them. I don't like them because they demonstrate what somebody who doesn't have a good argument resorts to, rather than somebody who has a good argument. That kind of thing. So to me, it always makes my side, when it's my side doing it, look weak if it has to resort to that. But clearly, people are much more image sensitive than they are. I don't really want to think about it. I just want some little simple 1,000-word image to tell me what to think. And yes, it does work. I just don't know if it's the kind of thing that we should encourage as a way to play the game. It's like allowing steroids in sports. I mean, you could argue steroids work in terms of enhancing performance, but we kind of know the price you pay for that is too high, and so we can't defend it as a method to enhance performance. Anyone reasonable, I would say, can't endorse it. So on to the video. We'll see how this goes. Hopefully we won't have any catastrophic errors. I've sped it up a little bit to facilitate a yes, to make it faster. That's why I sped it up, to make it faster. Video. Yeah, from the stream. From the, not my house. Anyway, virtue signaling, sort of the subject, but I don't think that's where it'll stay. But this idea that, well, I don't know if there's one idea. Some people just use the term to degrade any idea of a conversation about ever being a good person. That somehow you're just supposed to be whatever person your impulses define you as, and you're not supposed to do any contemplating of some idea, that there's some other agenda beyond just doing what comes naturally or something. Now, I would obviously say, if you watch my videos, that no, it's more complicated than that. Yes. So I would argue that, as I've stated before, and I will state in this video, but I'm just going to emphasize it over and over again, yes, your brain is a bunch of programs, and whatever the programs are as a group, you're going to have to perceive doing the right thing as being right for you personally.
if you don't think it's right for you personally, you're going to have dissidence. You're going to have a problem. You're not going to be reliably honorable. You're going to be bribable. You're going to cheat. You're going to fail because it doesn't mean anything to you to look in the mirror or something. It's just really about what's the end result for me personally, what's in it for me. And if you don't think any further than that, then it's just about what am I going to get caught? What's my risk equation in terms of getting caught? Having no virtue or no integrity. But clearly, I think for a lot of people, having integrity means something. They want the crap written on their tombstone not to be a complete lie. They want to be they want to be categorized as a successful human experiment, not a cheater or a failure. Yeah, and it's personal.
A lot more complicated, and that's just cheap rhetoric used by people who wish to indulge in the liberty of an unobligated life and not be burdened by any extra responsibilities beyond acquiring their own comfort.
So, just pointing out that now we got people saying that you're just virtue signaling. You're just wearing it on your sleeve. I'm a good person. And so any cause is now corrupted by people as if it's insincere because people have a self-interest in the sense that they feel pride or they have a nice self-image because they're trying to do something good. And that is looked at as some sort of insincere or selfish act rather than some kind of sincere act. And clearly, in some cases, the person trying to be virtuous is doing exactly that. But I would argue that in most cases, or many cases, you can certainly test that theory, and there's plenty of people, who do the right thing just because they know it's the right thing, not because it's fun or in any overt way profitable to them personally beyond some sort of satisfaction in knowing when it was their turn to be the point man, they didn't shirk their responsibility.
And that's it. Get as much of they can within the bounds of, legal prosecution. And so that's their agenda. They're not describing the agenda of the virtue signalist. They're just making excuses to cop out from any bigger project than, me hungry, me horny, me lazy.
So I'm basically turning that argument around where they're impugning the character of the virtuous people, and I'm going to argue that the reason why they're impugning their character is merely because they are so depraved that they have to defend being a depraved, selfish cunt. And the only way to do that is to somehow cast aspersion on the responsible, ethical, decent sorts and somehow insult being responsible and decent so they can be more irresponsible and more indecent in their their immature and minor goal of calculating what's in it for them, without any calculation without placing any value on the welfare of other humans living among them or the many humans and animals that will live in the future that they're perhaps compromising with their selfishness.
But then there's the other side. That is, there is a bunch of psychology that runs us. And as I think, well, I don't know, I have argued, obviously, that to do anything virtuous, you do kind of have to make it a self-interest. That is, everything you do, your brain has to think it's the right thing. And in a sense, it has to think it's the right thing for you. You're going to be honorable, or you're going to be one of these responsible people rather than one of these irresponsible people. You're going to be anti-lazy, or an anti-exploitionist, a taker. You're going to be the unrapist, not the rapist. And that's a
sort of like that as a theme, just this idea that you can identify as an intelligence waste and inefficiency. And you can say, quite obviously, sensibly, I'm going to fight that. I'm going to be the underdog against waste and inefficiency. And I'm going to do what I can to eliminate unnecessary waste and inefficiency. Not exactly something that should be outside the realm of every human's consideration as a reasonable thing to do. Fight waste and inefficiency, not only in your own behavior, but in the behavior of our civilization. Which always brings up for me the immediate example, the reflexive example of waste that's stuck in my head in the last couple of years, has been the whole idea of the solar panels on roofs. An insanely wasteful and stupid way to implement the technology, just throwing away 50%, maybe 70% of the value, throwing it away for no reason besides people have some horny to make their house look stupid, and say, I own it. When if they just put the panels a couple of miles away on a better piece of ground, where they could be pointed at the sun and where they could be maintained really easy and cleaned, they could get 70% more value by having a collective system rather than a stupid, idiotic, I own it system. But so huge waste, and so few people are fighting it. So, I mean, we have a problem in our civilization if it occurs to so few to recognize just plainly just a grotesque waste of a resource. Yeah, it's pretty sad.
Personal ambition to keep your own record clean. And so, yes, many people turn little things into personal virtues. I did it. I was there, I'll wear a t-shirt and declare myself superior to you because I fed some Chinese people. And yes, now that could be mocked, in a sense, as rather insincere virtue signaling.
Right, and so the point I'll make now is that, so what? It's still good versus doing nothing. It's still a step forward, not a step backward. Now the person's being more boastful than they should be, or they're taking more credit, or they're saying my brain's better, or some kind of bullshit, feeling all proud of themselves because they did something minimally decent. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of lame. But frankly, if I have the choice between the selfish son of a bitch and the virtue signalist, why wouldn't I want the person at least pointed in the better direction of being a better person? It seems an obvious win for me to live in a world where people are attempting to signal virtue. People who aren't trying are complete waste of time. I mean, they'll never do anything for your world.
But it doesn't change the fact that people in China need to be fed. It doesn't change the reality that there are right ways to do things and wrong ways, and and that we got to do better, or we should want to do better. We should desire for our own peace of mind to do better. And so everything's quite upside down in our world. The things that are things to be admired, idealism, perfectionism, are despised in general conversation.
Yes, mocked and ridiculed and belittled, and in any way possible sabotaged as something to be humiliated. Humiliate the person, who is imperfectly attempting to be virtuous. That, as something a civilization does, that's a guaranteed loser.
This recording? Yeah, it says so. Anyway, and as kind of mockable things almost, that even if they were impossible to achieve, that somehow we shouldn't attempt to, as if there's you can make some sort of mistake going in the right direction. And I laugh because it's...
Yes, all you can do is not get as much as you would want to get out of your heightened sense of efficiency. If you're just doing it for pride points, well, you're probably doing it in thin ways. Your contribution, your charity, is probably in some sort of form that is emotionally supportive, and this, and this. And then when you look at the economics of it, yes, it just is a club of do-gooders who are basically just patting each other on the back and rewarding each other for being so special, and their actual accomplishment in the real world is minimal. So yes, people can not do it very well. They can be inefficient as being at being fighters of inefficiency. But again, why wouldn't I want somebody with at least their oars in the water? Somebody who's trying. Maybe they're not oaring very well, but it's better than nothing. A lot better than nothing.
It's like, gee, people are really this stupid? You know, like trying is somehow there's some way to fail at not exceeding, not achieving a goal that has, in every step you take towards it, nothing but effectively improvement in the human condition.
Very few of these people who are wasting their virtue by signaling too much are doing anything called damage. They're, again, just wasting a better productivity they could have achieved. But they're not doing the negative thing of just being a selfish cunt.
Of course, that would be you know, harmless. It would be harmless to try, and very likely to be the opposite of harmless, productive or something. So, really, this morning, the only one we're going to get for a while. So unfortunately, weather not been very well, not very good. So the argument.
Distraction people and such. You want to make sure you're not saying skanky cunt at the wrong time.
That virtue is a bad thing is really pointless. It's really a good thing. And whether you're signaling, whether you're full of shit, whether you're just running some personal program that says, I will be an admirable sort of person because of this good deed I did, or I'll be respected or liked, or whatever personal taint you might put on something called virtue, there's no point.
Understood that there'll always be some kind of personal taint, because that's the way we're built. That's the way the biological organism is built. The agenda, the action can't happen until you feel the impulse. And this sort of gets to another deeper conversation about how the brain works and what emotions are in their fundamental form anyway, and that the mystic's also full of crap on. Because there's really only two kinds of emotions, those that drive you towards something and those that drive you away. Attraction, repulsion. That's the fundamental mechanism. But anyway, moving on.
Personally tainting, I mean, there's no point in thinking that the personal taint in any way changes the fact that it's probably a good thing. So, so it's really back down to the basic argument, which again I'd argue is, for most people, it's the signaling is from a very negative position, where they're just finding excuses not to be burdened by any notion of obligation. The hell? You do see some weird shit now and then. Oh, okay. Bicycle climbing over a tree.
So basically, I was saying there that again, this is to the advantage of the small agenda folk. To keep the agenda small. Selfishness works, greed is good, all of that crap that is just for them, tailoring a world for themselves to own and manipulate, and it has no broader concept of any implications or responsibilities to, again, anybody else on the planet, any other feeling thing, or the future. So it's just a very small-minded perspective.
Okay. So what the hell is a bicycle in that tree? Anyway, thought it was UFOs for a second. Nope. Shiny helmets and stuff, it always throws you off. More crowded than I thought it would be. And such. So, yeah, I don't think you can lose in recognizing that we're flawed humans, and we will attempt to make doing the right thing for the world into something right for us. But that doesn't change the rightness of the right thing. A little bit messy here. Stupid weather. Yeah. I thought they would have fixed this by now.
Rather huge trees, actually. You can see them, but it's a pretty big tree in the way. You gotta crawl over and under, and yeah.
Frankly, forcing me to do all this extra. Whoa, fine. So anyway, yes, so the reason why I'm out here is because I'm going to, town has these, you know, cleanup day thingies or whatever, environmental Earth Day thing. They never really have it around Earth Day, which is quite annoying. But anyway, and so it's sort of a routine over the years. And yeah, I have the question, you know, why do I do it? Frankly, I don't want to save the Earth. You know, I don't like people much anymore, especially since the Trump era, especially the people in this town. And so it is kind of a awkward thing to, you know, be doing something for which I don't have clear motivation. And it's, I think, more just a routine and a bit of hopefulness on my part that if, you know, everybody made these little contributions, you know, it would add up to something meaningful in the world. So if I don't do it, everybody else won't do it, blah, 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 blah.
Right, so it's a sense of an obligation in the sense that you can't really advocate for something unless you're willing to, you know, demonstrate that it's not that big a deal, and these, you know, we can all make a little contribution in whatever way we can. It's, you know, not hard to do, and so yes, it's sort of an obligation to, in some cases, you're sort of obligated to do by example, to show the example, because if you don't, then everybody else will just say, well, nobody else is doing it, and so, you know, why should I?
So if I don't feel motivated, then nobody will feel motivated. And this year is an especially good case for me because I really haven't been dealing with people much. This is a couple of the people I work for moved and this and that, so I don't practice my anxiety issue problem thing, you know, in the sense that I'm not having to adjust to the difficulty I have dealing with people. And so this one's really quite uncomfortable. So I really don't want to go, which is unusual in the sense that I usually like to work and I like being productive and all that kind of stuff. But I'm older now, I'm tired, and I have anxiety, and yeah, so it's not really much of a personal interest for this one. And I'm just dragging myself out of a sense of obligation to the idea that we have to endure these little inconveniences to do good, because they're not going to necessarily be fun. Doing the right thing isn't likely to be fun.
Right, and that's a big problem because, you know, people really do demand that they really do wish to maximize their personal comfort. That's the agenda of the machine. And this notion of, you know, them doing a little bit of pain for some long-term gain, they can't feel the long-term gain, so they can't appreciate how cost-effective it really is. You know, the tiny inconvenience now for the big gain later. And that's like much of our life, you know, because we are so poorly instructed. Each generation is pretty poorly instructed by the previous generation regarding all the traps of indulgences, you know, this I want it and I want it now kind of stuff. And there really isn't enough preaching by people with experience in life that doesn't work. You got to take care of yourself. You got to do certain things to set yourself up in the future to have more choices. And you can start eliminating your choices by making stupid mistakes in your youth. And it's a really important trap. A lot of people fall into the trap. You know, a lot of people, you know, make lifestyle decisions that lead them into ruin. And, you know, the decisions were way too casual and made by way too immature a brain. And there has to be a mechanism, I think, in raising kids where you have to let them practice being adults and taking responsibility for those things. And, you know, with simulations, and I mean, we simulate F-15s, we simulate lots of things. We ought to simulate life and train young people to have a little more respect for the preciousness of what they're playing with, their future. And then maybe that will give them some enlightenment in terms of understanding that it's also true for the big world as a whole, that this generation has an obligation to take advantage of the increased inefficiency for the future that can be gained by minor inconveniences in the present. Really important, totally undiscussed.
And that's, that's a big fact. It just sits there and says, yep, big fact. And you do have to deal with that. And understand that, well, at least understand from my personal perspective. I have to at least know what it feels like to be inconvenienced. I have to know what it is I'm selling, which is just a simple idea that you change a few thoughts in your head are allowed the dignity they deserve, the respect they deserve. And so instead of your brain closing off when somebody says the word responsibility, productivity, or efficiency, those are really important words to you rather than unimportant. And you realize that.
Yes, I just can't emphasize it enough. I mean, your life is more than how happy you were. Your life is your blood footprint, what you did to the world while you were here. Did you make it a mess? Did you put dog shit on its shoe? What did you do to the world while you were here? What was your impact on the people around you and on the future people will have to live in? Did you do something to improve that equation, or did you just not give a shit? And if you didn't give a shit, you really wasted your life.
Yeah, you gotta, how you doing? Hey, that you gotta, simply do better. You can't keep just making excuses and say somebody else's problem, let somebody else pay for it, all that kind of crap. So I guess the more complex subject, the bigger subject, is what the hell is a virtue in terms of action in the world, because so many things are obviously not virtuous in the sense that they don't fix the problem, they make it worse.
So this is another catch to the subject, is there's people who are considered virtuous or virtual signaling, and they're virtue signaling on a silly project like, let's make more people, or let's stop abortion, or let's do some other stupid thing that isn't virtuous. So they'll go out and picket and stop women from having abortions and think they're doing something to improve the future or improve the world, and no, they're just creating idiocracy. They're creating voters who will vote against all the things they hold precious. They won't be gaining anything from that. They won't gain this better world. So their understanding of good and evil, or right and wrong, is fucked up. So their definition of a virtue is fucked up, and then they're signaling for this fake virtue that isn't going to make the world a better place anyway. So it is another subject. It's just that many people are virtue signaling when they're really just being fucking stupid, evil assholes. Dumb.
They're conveniently, they feel good, they look like you're helping, but you're really just making it worse. So, you could argue that feeding the hungry is, it's more complicated than just feeling good that you gave somebody a meal, because if you don't feed their behavior, they'll just create more hungry, and you'll have to give them more food, and then we know that sort of just actually works against our self-interest. And so any plan, any virtuous plan, has to do better than failing.
Right, so a virtue would be to really think it through and to pay attention and try to do it right instead of wrong. So it's just the virtue of not being reckless or lazy in your implementation of a good deed. Your good deed should be calculated, and especially when it's important. When it is a lot of your personal resource or a lot of your contribution will be devoted to this purpose, you ought to make sure the purpose is reasonable, has a reasonable chance of making a better future.
If it fails, it's kind of hard to think of that as virtuous. So you got to do a little better and come up with mechanisms and strategies that are more difficult, more painful to implement, not as rewarding. You won't get smiley faces and thank yous from the people you're really saving, who are the ones in the future. Which, again, I think I could make a good argument that that's the real game, is the future. We're a tiny part of this mechanism, this fun, and people have to have a perspective where they understand the long term is the only term worth considering.
Now, another big thing, a big statement is just, you know, the future is much, much bigger. It's entitled to more attention just because of its size. Okay, the length of time. We will be in the future condition much longer than we're in the present condition.
You gotta do more thoughtful grass planting, kind of expensive stuff, the pre-mulched grass.
Yeah, they planted it apparently too when the weather was still kind of, you know, the nights were still below freezing, so don't know if that's going to work out. So another slight inefficiency maybe of, you know, want it now and you can't have it now, you got to wait, you know.
I don't see all these environmental people. Where the hell are they?
Yeah, so I showed up and there was nowhere there, and they finally showed up, and but not too many people showed up. They weren't very well organized, and so they didn't, you know, it wasn't a very efficient use of the minor resource that was available, and nobody had tools. You know, I had brought my own, but you know, so you know, it's volunteer thing. So you know, they just, you know, some years they're more organized than others, and this year just seemed like they were just throwing it together, and not enough preliminary work, or however you want to put it.
It's the right day, right? 14th or whatever. Look at all this good stuff they're throwing out. What a crime. Perfectly good garbage. They ought to check with me first before they throw anything out.
Yeah, it's another efficiency thing, right? I mean, they were just soil barriers and stuff. It was a temporary fence, but it's good tarp material, good little pieces of wood. I mean, just to throw it in a dump is just, these are things that just I don't think should happen. I just don't think so.
Let me pick it up. They should be here. Where are the environmental people? Where are you, environmental people? I'm really not that early. Might be a little early. I'm not that early. I'll find out. Are they way down there? There's a runner. Lots of runners out here. So this is the dredged pond. I have reseeded the bank appropriately. This really is the location. I know it is. I know it is. I'm supposed to be here with my steel bar. The woman's looking at me over there. Boy, that guy has a weird raping technique. But I'm sort of into it.
Yes, I mean, you do feel a little awkward when you're walking around with weapons and such, but, you know, it's to the price you pay for being virtuous. Sometimes you look funny.
Oh, look at all this good stuff they threw out. Holy crap. Perfectly excellent concrete. Holy shit. I have no idea where this came from.
Alright, so it was actually the sidewalk in front of the road. I guess they cracked it or something. But they tore up the whole thing. Perfectly good sidewalk. I mean, I'd use it somewhere else. I could put it in my front walk, you know, perfectly good. You know, a couple of cracks in it, I just cement them up and no problem. You know, I don't get it.
What the hell did this? It looks like a sidewalk, doesn't it? Yes, it does here, right? It looks just like a sidewalk. There's no sidewalk's been removed, but it is a sidewalk. Interesting. Must be, I don't know, where the hell were they getting all this crap from? What a waste putting in this truck like this thing. It's fucking breaking the steel, actually bending it. Oh, the world is retarded. Alright, wait.
Yeah, I don't know how they're going to move that thing. I mean, it's got to weigh 1 billion pounds. A dumpster full of a sidewalk. I mean, you know, it's like a dumpster full of water, I guess, right? No, concrete's got to be heavier than water.
Right, that's probably enough for now. Probably should be careful with this camera anyway. So anyway, one last look at the now deeper pond. It shouldn't turn all scubby and such. So. Video. Yeah, from the stream. From the...
Okay, that started over for some reason. But anyway, so yeah, we'll go to video number 2, but maybe I'll do this middle part first. So I did talk to the environmental guy a little and this and that, and it was kind of funny. You know, I previously made a video, I think, on the Inmendham channel. Well, I made one for on the town site, but anyway, pointing out how they should have never dredged the pond so late in the year, and they're going to kill all the turtles and blah blah blah. So I was actually talking to the guy, and I was telling him how, you know, they probably shouldn't have done that and blah blah blah, and telling him about how the turtles are going to be dead. And then an hour later, he calls me over, and because there was a big giant dead turtle. I think it's this image. Yeah, there he is. There she is, probably. So as I explained too, that the animals were getting into the eggs every year, and so they, you know, it'd be nice if they could put up a little bit of chicken wire or something just to keep the raccoons out of the eggs, you know, in September, August when they hatch. And but anyway, so you know, I was receptive to the points I was making, which was good. But it was kind of like I just called this. So this is a big snapping turtle. You can see like there's an oak leaf over here, you know. So you can sort of get an idea. It's about a 40-pound, maybe a little more, snapping turtle. So, you know, and I sort of explained how to, you know, you can't dredge the pond and then refill it in the winter because the turtle goes into the bank and blah, blah, blah. And so he probably, when it was dredged or empty, he found a lower location to hibernate, and he just ended up being suffocated. Snapping turtles do look like males always because they're pretty nasty. But anyway, so it was kind of interesting that I did call it. You know. So anyway, so back to the video. So we are going to try. I might have to fix the sound, or I might have to do something. Let's see. That's the video it's making now. I have to go down here, I believe. So I should be 40, right? So I did 38. I should be 40. Good luck.
So I've completed my virtual virtue signaling, and yes, I'm quite worn out and in pain. So, but I did it. Accomplished the task. Oh, sorry. I have to switch shoulders. Oh. Anyway, so yeah, not too many people this year. And they didn't really have a very good agenda, so no one had tools. So it was just people just walked around, picked up little bit of stuff like that.
Whoops.
And, so anyway, but yes,
I'll have to stitch these together now. I hit the wrong button, so happens. This wasn't really the important part, so it's okay. Yeah, it was really a warm day, like 80 degrees or something by the noon, and you know, it was hard work for this early in the season and such.
What am I in it for? What do I get for my trouble? And it's clearly always a problem. That there's no way to get around it. That's the problem. You have to have a personal interest in virtue for you to be virtuous. And that truth is being used by people to insult virtue.
So I'm just making the same point again, just driving it home, that this is really an invidious, insidious, monstrous thing that these mindful people, they have pretense that they've got a handle on things like Antikantavad and the mystic, when, you know, it's just obvious that what they're doing is basically trying to legitimize pretending that their thoughtful programs aren't capable of dominating their psychology, and at least setting the agenda in terms of they will demand attention. The agenda can't be set without somehow incorporating these better motives. And that's a real thing that human beings can be motivated by. They can be motivated by guilt and a sense of integrity and responsibility, and understanding that they left too much in the holster, so to speak. They didn't maximize their potential. They didn't get all they could have gotten out of their lives, and that should be enough. That should scare people to think that they squandered opportunity to do something good.
So, virtue is always good. Talk about doing the right thing. Even the people who don't walk the walk, and just talk the talk, it's still better to talk it than not talk it. It's still better to help inspire each other to do more, not to do less, not to find excuses to do less. And, the practical fact that we need to be rewarded in a personal way for doing the right thing isn't that big a problem. I mean, as a civilization, it really is to our own interest to make virtue a very profitable thing to be virtuous. We gave out, we had a virtue Olympics.
So this is another kind of irony of this conversation, is that there's these obscenities of human culture, the celebrityness, the sports icon, and the trivial celebrity of the movie actor or something who just happens to have a great script to read, and all of a sudden is a god. Even if they were truly talented, which they're sort of not, it's still a nothing accomplishment. It's some, it's nothing. It doesn't really fix anything or do anything or function in any important way. This stupid sports entertainment. It's a soap opera for adult males, and they should kind of be humiliated by the fact that they have to tune in and see if, Dr. Wacky Bat is going to get his, 500th home run, and it's no better than the woman doing the, with the soap opera. It's just a soap opera, and and they can't. Somehow the old stories aren't good enough. They can't just watch baseball from 1970 or something, no, they have to watch the new one for some dopey reason. So we have to keep making a new story every year. When there's plenty already stories written, we don't need to write any more of these things. We don't need any more chapters. There's enough chapters for you to spend your whole life. There's enough chapters in the recorded history book for you to spend your whole life reading the soap opera. A huge waste of resources. Hugely silly priority where people admire somebody for swimming faster than somebody else, and they'll give them gold medals, and they'll spend a whole bunch on the theater for their spectacular event and all of this stuff, and they'll pay nothing for having a virtue signaling Olympics. I mean, we really should be having. We should be giving gold medals out to people willing to jump on the grenade. Damn it. I mean, that's what you want from a society, is people who make an effort to do the best they can for the human race, for the sentient organisms on planet Earth, all of that crap. And we, as a culture, give nothing. And to add insult to injury, asswipes like Antacondavad and the Mystic will insult it and trivialize it. Amazing. But I've never heard them make a video about how inane sports is.
I really don't think it'd be a bad idea. I mean, you can't lose as a civilization for at least trying. Every dollar you spend trying to inspire people to be virtuous, to give them a personal reward, to make them feel accomplished or valued, it costs pennies, and you'll reap millions in terms of the value to your civilization. It just makes logical sense to encourage virtue, not to insult it. And there are assholes on the internet who think they're profound, deep philosophical mindfulness thinkers who really do think that there's no such thing as an intelligent understanding of efficiency and value, and that just because humans aren't wonderful animals by nature, we surely can be by nurture and by knowledge.
Yeah, it's really, like I said, you can be raised to be obligated. Like a lot of people, I think a lot of the racism against Jews is the fact that they are raised in a culture, they're conditioned to be achievers, okay, to live up to the standard, to not embarrass the tribe. And so some people, again, think this is a negative thing, that somehow, inspiring and motivating for very positive things in the world, like being doctors and doing science and being educated and all that, like somehow that's retarded, and they really should be teaching the kids how to play baseball and golf and bullshit, how to play bingo, how to gamble. So there's the ironies are so thick and so pathetic. And then, besides the conditioning of kids into being motivated to achieve, there's just the fact that as you grow into your life, you become intelligent to know that there are starving people in China, and there will be a future that would appreciate not being globally warmed out of a survivable existence.
I mean, it's not that. It's really shouldn't be something I'd even have to explain. That if you could have a toy, okay, that not only went down the racetrack really fast, and not only lit your cigarettes, and not only, but also, every now and then it would make a vaccine to cure the disease or something, you'd be like, yeah, cool. I mean, it's all value added. You'd want to be able to have toys that did productive things, that fed the starving people in China. And, if it doesn't cost you anything, doesn't make it perform less well, then why wouldn't you say, yeah, that'd be really cool, that my dog cured cancer or something. And the fact that you people don't inspire, that you don't think, human beings.
Well, again, I just bring up the example of the sort of a trivial example, but the solar panel thing, it's a huge amount of money, huge amount of waste. It's right there in front of everybody. If they had any kind of conversation about it, the truth is not that complex. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand how it's just stupid to do it the wrong way. And yet, as a society, if somebody points out how you're doing it wrong, they don't want to hear it.
Beings should also maximize their efficiency, and that we should design them to have this value-added component. Not only to be selfish and conniving and personally interested and all that crap, cheaters on their wivers and all that bullshit. Not only all that fun stuff, but maybe they'd also engineer a straighter path to some location, saving millions of blistered feet.
Again, see, the obligation isn't to be perfect. The obligation is not to be profoundly imperfect. I mean, just a complete menace to efficiency. And it seems like there are these people who are completely offended that you would achieve efficiency, or attempt to, or argue for it, because they have this fatalistic notion of reality, and it's basically built on the fact that they can't manage to organize any thoughts that compel them to think that if they don't personally profit, it can't be worth anything. And it's so fucking stupid and so fucking ignorant. It stuns me that intelligent people can talk such rubbish.
Some sort of thing. Why wouldn't anything that improves the human condition, or the sentient life form condition, be something you would reward and say, very good, excellent, fantastic. And instead, now people are labeled as virtue signaling because they advocate for less harm in the world. I mean, it's an insult now. You're ridiculed for recognizing that there's any problems in the world that might be within our ability to fix. And like I said, this is all just because there are an awful lot of people who they don't want to live in a world where they have to account for all of the brutalities taking place and all of the exploitation. They don't want to accept responsibility for what's out the window. The slaves working in the fields.
Yeah, so again, that's all it comes down to, as I see it. There's just people who are so immature, they can't think past being a monkey. They just haven't grown past the monkey stage. They've just never become fully human.
All the misery, all the death and pain and suffering that is caused to provide them with their adventure here on Earth. We just don't want to hear anything about any kind of responsibility for that, any obligation to do anything to mitigate against it, because that would compromise their fun. That would be work, and maybe it might be tedious and unpleasant. It might cost them $5.
Yes, and they might have to think about it, and they don't want to think about it. That's really probably the number one reason is those are sad and uncomfortable thoughts about how they're complete underachievers and that they've completely let the future down, and they really don't want to accept that, oh yeah, that's what I did. I fucked them. I disabled them. I crippled them because of my self-indulgence, and they just don't want to have to play that record in their head.
They just don't want to. They don't want to invest in civilization. They just want to invest in their time right now. They just couldn't care less what kind of world the future has to live in. That's bad. It's a pretty damning statement regarding the state of the average human consciousness, that it can't do this basic math. It's just basic. I don't know how people missed it. I don't know how they went through their lives without recognizing how little mistakes they make could have caused somebody harm.
Yeah, so now I'll do a personal anecdote. But there's lots of circumstances in my life where I was humiliated by my selfishness, and then humiliated by the lack of thought I gave a circumstance. And so there's lots of examples, but here's one of them.
They didn't make any of those mistakes in their life. Quite surprising. It only takes one kind of experience like that, it's, those little humiliating or, really disappointing moments where something goes catastrophically wrong. And, I had one of those. I had many of those. But one of them that just came to mind was once I was, I had a twin sister, and we were attempting to be grown up when we weren't, and we were trying to build a campfire, and sort of putting wood in a teepee style condition with kindling and stuff, and a piece of stick was stuck or something. I went to bend it, and the stick moved and it hit my sister right in the teeth, and knocked one of her front teeth out. The good news was they rushed her to a dentist and he shoved it back in, and it was okay. But I felt so bad. It's like I know I didn't do anything on purpose, and I know it wasn't a malicious thing, or it wasn't even like it was a not an understandable accident, like I was horribly reckless or something. I couldn't find like I made any huge mistakes, but I still felt like absolute shit. And those moments, kind of cue you into this idea that, my life is dangerous. I can be doing something perfectly innocent, and I can mess up and make a mistake, and it's like you fall off the tightrope and you land on, some baby stroller, some kind of horrible double accident.
So the catch to this is that it's becoming risk averse, and there's a ton of people who just don't want to have that conversation either. They like the demolition derby. They just don't want to talk about the back injuries and the neck injuries and all the other crap that are insanely high price to pay for a stupid entertainment. We let little kids play pee-wee football, and every year they get paralyzed. Every year it happens. And in my brain, there's just no way you could say this stupid fucking activity, just plain stupid, especially with kids that young, can it all be justified as worth it? It's worth paralyzing kids for. It's insanely stupid. But people don't like not going for it. They don't like the recognizing. Again, I've used this example, but they don't want to recognize that they've lost too much money at the casino, and playing more to try to win it back is just the last strategy you want to apply, and yet it seems reasonable to people. And it's totally unreasonable, because it's no fun to admit defeat. It's no fun to admit you have limitations. It's just not fun. And that's all it comes down to. So they compromise real hard value because it's not fun enough to be worried and paranoid and afraid.
And you paralyze the kid or something, and you know, it's so anyway, I mean, I just don't know how people could avoid having some experiences like that where they really fucked up and they get some appreciation for the fact that their life is, no matter how they look at it, in terms of still being selfish and horny for their own comfort, that they have to have some knowledge that it's dangerous. Sweating. Well, too bad. Beat. Really beat. Anyway,
I really was. I really was tired. Oh, so, yeah, it's kind of a long walk, and it's uphill. The last, few hundred yards are all uphill through prickers.
What was I? Yeah, I just don't know how they miss having those experiences. So like I said, I had more than one of them. Bit of humiliation where I think I'm in control. I think I know what I'm doing. Even a car accident. I had one car accident. It sure wised me up pretty fast in terms of, this is a huge responsibility driving. Again, it was one of those things where I didn't do anything overtly wrong. I mean, it wasn't, it was a 50-50 accident, but you still are aware that, well, I certainly was not thinking about driving when I had the accident. I mean, I was doing what everybody does, which is think about all the other crap in their life. And maybe if I'd been paying a little closer attention, I would have been one step ahead. And that would have been all that was needed to prevent it. So anyway, this whole idea of being conscientious, trying to live a virtuous life, an efficient, functional, value-added existence.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that simple. I mean, how can anybody argue against that? That's all you're really trying to do, is just add value to your interaction with the world. And if you can somehow make something you're doing that you enjoy doing into something that also does some beneficial thing, then yes, we should in every way encourage that. Get the most out of your interactions in the world. I mean, how can anyone argue against it?
Where you're not only...
And it seems the whole culture is built around ignoring it.
To get your gratification. Oh. Little crocuses. Very little. Oh, fuck. My back is going to be shit tomorrow. Shit today. I can walk up that hill. So, finishing up. I have to walk a different route too because of the prickle bushes. Anyway, yeah, so it really is annoying, these assholes who think they're all mindful, mind-enlightened, and all they are is rationalizers for making excuses just to be dumb monkeys. Not doing a goddamn bit better because we can think better. And the fact that we have to personally own our virtue, in a sense, doesn't mean that virtue isn't real. It just means that, yes, the person who's going to be virtuous has to actually feed on it, has to actually find it edible, find a way to...
You got to be horny for it. And so that's a bit of conditioning, and that conditioning comes through maybe meditation. So all these practices they use to evade the negative thoughts maybe should be used to encourage the thoughts that humiliate them into trying a little harder.
Eat it, and that's not a bad thing. So, just fuck the selfish cunts. Anyway, till next time, and such. Leaves. Yeah, I won't do all that crunchy crap. Till next time. Video.
Alright, so I think we've accomplished the task. I won't bother with the comments I was going to read because it's a little different kind of brain conversation about it's the hard problem stuff. Why are we conscious? What's the relationship between feelings and thoughts? And that kind of conversation. So I'll save that for another time. So anyway, yeah, you know, yeah, well, there's not much else to say. Turtle. Obviously, the turtle's better off dead. You know, all that. I could make those kind of arguments, but as I've pointed out before, I wish for everything to do this one last time, one last death, and be done with it. But I have also argued that doing the right thing for the wrong reasons, I mean killing wildlife for the wrong reasons, because you're imposing neglect and you're not considering implications and you're just being a selfish cunt. So I don't want the outcome to be the right outcome for the wrong reasons, because we know if we endorse wrong reasons for outcomes, that most of them won't be good outcomes. Most of the time, the consequence of of choosing selfishness won't be a higher level of productivity or efficiency. So maybe in this case it was. We stopped the procreator, you know, but we did it for the wrong reason. And it is important for the system that we don't endorse right outcomes for wrong reasons. So that would be my added commentary. So anyway, till the next time and such, hopefully this will turn out tolerable, and hopefully I can stitch it together without ruining it and such. So see how it works and whatnot. So, till next time. Thank you for your attention if you've gotten all the way here. Appreciate it.